Hi everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Stitch Sessions. If you're new here, I'm Karen, and I love all things to do with crafting with crochet. Now this week's tutorial is a sweet, adorable baby blanket, which I call the Sunshine Baby Blanket. And I was really excited to use these granny circle motifs. Now some of you have seen me create the granny circle motif, and you've seen me shape it into a square. And I actually take you through the entire process in this tutorial and show you how to create a multitude of squares in order to sew them together and create this adorable baby blanket. Now this blanket measures 24.5 inches by 30 inches. And it's a typical, I would say, stroller size baby blanket or car seat baby blanket. If you're looking for something like to completely cover a crib or a bassinet, you would just simply make more squares to give you more length and width. And I love the fact that we just kept this super simple with a very, very classy mesh stitch border, just a simple little stitch, and then a final full double crochet border at the end. And it's just divine. I want to say it's chef's kiss. I'm really, really happy with how it came out. I'm always delighted when my vision actually comes to fruition exactly how I pictured it. So this design was inspired by the baby blanket that one of my aunts had made for me when I was a baby. And it looks like this. So it had this really pretty circular motif. And now I think actually from what I've been researching, this design was actually pretty popular in the 70s for blankets. So it's this kind of like pinwheel flower motif. And it's got this pretty nice little border. And I just love these colors too. And so when you step back, you can see that there's this little V formation with the flowers. And it just kind of really inspired me. But I just couldn't seem to find the right type of yarn that kind of gave me these same vibes. So when I had worked on showing you guys how to create a granny circle into a square, I thought, okay, well, I'm going to use that circle idea and use it in the Sunshine Blanket design. So it's kind of like one generation inspiring the next. So this is where I got the inspiration for the Sunshine Baby Blanket. So I hope you guys are gonna have a great time working on this. I know I did. And it's not difficult. It just takes a little bit of patience to create the motifs and then sew them together and you're good to go. So let's get to it. We're gonna first tackle the materials we're gonna need, and then I'm gonna take you step by step on how to create your very own blanket. Okay, let's talk about our materials here. So this is the basic square we're going to create. So as you can see, you'll probably remember this from our granny circle into a square tutorial. And I did hint that it was going to be used in another project, and here it is. So we are going to need 20 of these squares, okay? So you can see I've already kind of started a pile here. And so each of my squares measures about 5.5 inches across, which would be about 14 centimeters. And they are square, so it's 5.5 by 5.5. And the blanket that I'm looking to make is more like a stroller or car seat blanket, which on average is going to be about 30 by 24 or 61 by 56 centimeters. You can, of course, add more squares to make yours larger. But what we're going to do is we're going to focus on creating the square, and then we'll put them all together, and then we're going to create our border. So I am using this beautiful Truboo yarn by Lion Brand. I just love it. And if you remember seeing the Freedom Shawl tutorial, I used this yellow as part of that shawl. So that's the yarn we're using. You're most likely going to need approximately 300 grams or so, as always, depending on how large you want your blanket to be. And of course, based on the gauge of your stitching. So I generally would say 1 skein of the green, although I did pick up a second one just because I'm coming up to the end here. 1 skein each of the green and the yellow, and then I would definitely get at least 2 of the white if you are following my color scheme here. Of course, I always recommend getting 2 of everything just to be on the safe side, but that of course is totally up to you. So this is considered a lightweight 3 yarn. They come in 100 gram skeins, which contain 241 yards or 220 meters. It is 100% rayon from bamboo. I love it. And you can machine wash, cool, gentle cycle, and lay flat to dry. In case you're curious about the care of this. They do recommend a 4mm hook, and I'm actually going to use 2 different types of hooks for this project. So I've got my 4mm hook here, which is also known as a G or a size 8. And I also have a 4.5mm hook, which is also known as a G or a 7. That's funny. They both have the same letter code on there, but there you go. So I used the 4mm hook to create my center, and I just did that to create a little bit of a tighter stitching in the center. And then for the rest of the square, I went ahead and used the 4.5mm hook just to kind of allow it to be a little bit more lacy. But if you just wanted to go ahead and use the 4.5mm hook for the whole thing, you are a-okay. But I just wanted to explain that in case you saw me using a second hook. Okay, and as always, make sure you have a pair of scissors and your yarn needle on hand to sew in all of your ends at the end, because there will be quite a bit. And now we're ready to get started. So what we're going to do, first things first, is we are going to create our square, which actually is going to begin by creating a granny circle and shaping it into a square. So you've probably already seen this tutorial where I took the circle and shaped it into a square. But in that tutorial, I had already made the circle because I'd done it in another tutorial if you just wanted to kind of understand the principle of creating those shapes. So to start off here, I'm going to take you from the beginning all the way to the end of this square, and then the rest will be easy peasy. So let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to start with my green color for the center, and I'm going to start with a cinch circle, and that's basically just creating a loop around your 2 fingers as if you're going to create a slip knot. And of course, I've got my 4mm hook to begin, and you're going to pull up a loop, but with a slip knot, you see, you would just pull it taut and it's complete. But a cinch circle is, I like to call it an unresolved slip knot. So you're going to bring your yarn around your 2 fingers, and you're going to pull up a loop like normal, but you're not going to pull it shut, okay? This right here, that is your cinch circle. And you're probably thinking, wow, this is kind of really wonky here. So what I like to do is I take my fingers out, and then I'm going to chain 1. Now this is where it gets a little tricky because the yarn is all floppy here, and if you're not comfortable with it, or if you're not used to it, it's going to be a bit challenging, but you've got to give it a little bit of time. And I always take the tail out, and there is my cinch circle, which is also known as a magic ring. Okay, and now when you work into the circle, you do want to work over this tail, because the tail is what cinches your circle shut. Okay, so now we're going to begin by chaining 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And sometimes that first chain 1 would count as a stitch, but in this project, I'm not going to count it as anything. So this chain 4 is going to count as a double crochet and a chain 1. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to work into our circle here and place a double crochet stitch. So we're going to yarn over, insert, pull up a loop, and resolve a double crochet as usual. So now you have something that looks like this. It's kind of a bit wonky. So technically the chain 3 counts as a double crochet, the 4th chain is a spacer, and now we have our next double crochet. So we are going to continue now by chaining 1 and going back in and placing a double crochet. And we're going to do this several times so that you're going to have 12 pieces of the pie, I like to say. So see? So each double crochet now is going to get a chain 1 spacer. So I'm going to do that again, chain 1 and double crochet into the cinch circle. And we want, like I said, we want to do this 12 times. So I'm going to go ahead and finish mine, and I'll meet you at the end of round 1. Okay, I've come up to the end of my 12th double crochet. I've done a chain 1. This point, I like to take my short tail and I'm going to pull on it, and that's what's going to cinch the center nice and closed, just like that. Don't be afraid to pull it a little tighter. Afterwards, I am going to weave this in as soon as possible so that it stays nice and shut. But first, we need to finish off round 1. So now we're going to find the top of the 3rd chain, 1, 2, and 3, and we're going to slip stitch to join. And round 1 is complete. Okay, so you have something that looks like that. Now I'm going to chain 1 and snip my yarn. I'm going to leave a little bit of a tail. And I'm done with the green for now. I'm just going to pull that through. Okay. And so you've got this really pretty little circle here. And there is a chain 1 space between each double crochet. Now you can go ahead and weave this in as well right away. I like to, when I start with cinch circles, I like to go back and weave in this tail as soon as I can. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we're going to start with round number 2. Okay, so ready for round number 2. So this is where we're going to introduce my yellow color, and now I'm going to bring in my 4.5 millimeter hook, which is what I'm going to be using for the rest of this project. So I'm going to start off actually by placing a slip knot on the hook. And then I'm just going to find any space. I always like to start away from where I knotted it, which is right about there. So I'm going to insert my hook into the space, and I am going to single crochet. So I'm going to pull up a loop. So I have 2 loops, and then I'm going to pull through like a single crochet. Now we're just going to weave in that tail at the end. Then from here, see how there is a little loop on the side? We call that the left leg of the single crochet. I'm going to insert my hook and pull up another loop, and then resolve like a single crochet as well. This is the way sometimes I will do what I like to call a self-contained double crochet. Some people will chain 3, which you can absolutely do, and you'll see me do later on. But just to give it a little bit more girth, I like to do this at the beginning of my rounds here. So that is going to count as 1 double crochet. Now I'm going to go back into this space and place another double crochet. So I have 2 double crochets in the chain 1 space. Now I'm going to chain 1 and move into the next space, and we're going to place 2 double crochets. Okay, chain 1 and repeat. So we're going to do that all the way around until you come to the end of round number 2. So we've had 12 double crochet stitches in round 1. We're not counting the chain 1s. At the end of round number 2, you're going to have 24 double crochets. Again, we're not including those chain 1 spaces. Repeat that to the end of round 2. Okay, I've just finished doing my last set, and now I just need to chain 1, and now I'm going to find the top of that very first double crochet we did. Remember, that was that self-contained double crochet, and I'm just going to slip stitch to join my yarn. Just like that. Then I'm going to chain 1 and snip my yarn. And I'm finished for now with my yellow. Okay, so now you can really see we're still maintaining the circular shape, and we're going to do this for one more round before we start to square it off. So let's go on to round number 3. For round number 3, I'm going to reintroduce my green, and I'm going to place a slip knot on my hook. And I'm going to begin exactly the same way I did with round number 2. So I'm going to just find a spot here, and I'm going to go into the space. And like I did before, I'm just going to single crochet right away. Some people will slip stitch. In this project, I'm going to single crochet right away. And then go into that left leg here. See, that's loop. That's a loop there. And we're going to single crochet out of there. Okay. Then I'll weave in that end at the end. In round number 3, we're going to place 3 double crochets in each space. So we've already done 1. So we need to place 2 more. So we have 1 and 2. Okay. Then we're going to chain 1, find your next space, which is a little easier to see. And now we're going to place 3 double crochets into that space. Okay. Then you're going to chain 1, and you're going to repeat that into every single space all the way around. And at the end, you will slip stitch to join at the top of your first double crochet stitch. So at the end of round 3, you will then have 36 double crochets. So you'll notice in the first round, we did 1 double crochet with the spacer. In round 2, we did 2 double crochets with a spacer each. And in round 3, we're doing 3 double crochets and a spacer. So that is now our official shell stitch. Okay, go ahead and do that for round 3, and then we'll be ready to begin squaring off our circle. Okay, round 3 is complete. I now have 36 double crochets. I still have 12 spaces, which is perfect because now we're going to take our circle and create a square. So remember, a square has 4 sides. So we're going to take those 12 spaces, divide it by 4, and that is going to give us 3. That means into every 3rd space, we're going to create our corner. And so you can see here, this is where we created our corner. So we are going to do that. So let's pick up our white yarn now. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to just create a slip knot on my hook. I'm going to find a space here. And for round 4, I am actually going to slip stitch. Okay, a little tail there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to chain 5. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. This is going to count as a double crochet and a chain 2. So chain 2s are great for creating the bend in our corners. Now I'm going to go back into the same space and I'm going to place a shell stitch, which is 3 double crochet stitches. So we have 1, and then we have 2, and now we have 3. So what we've done here is created a partial corner. So 3 of these chains are considered a double crochet. We've got the other 2 chains are the corner, and then we've got the other shell stitch. When we come back around, we're going to finish this corner, and I'll explain to you why I like doing my corners this way. Those of you that are very well versed in granny motifs, you may have a slightly different way, but this is how I like to do it. So now into the next space, I'm just going to place a regular shell stitch. I am not chaining 1 now between my shells. And I just decided not to because when I was chaining 1, it was just bunching up too much. So you can experiment with that. Some people continue to chain 1, some people do not. Okay, so there's 1. Now I'm going to go into the next space and I'm going to place a shell. So now I've done 2 shells, or I worked 2 spaces. Remember, into every third space we're creating a corner. So that was a corner there. So corner, shell, shell, corner. So into every corner we're going to place a shell stitch, which is 3 double crochet stitches. We're going to chain 2 and go back into that space to create another shell. Just like that. So you can really see that point is taking shape there. Okay, and that is what you're going to do to complete round number 4. So into the next space, it's a shell. In the next space, it's a shell. Then it's a corner. Shell, shell, corner, which is shell, chain 2, shell, 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 and look at that, we're back to our first corner. So go ahead and do that. I will meet you at the end of round 4 to talk about how we're going to finish it off. Okay, so I've come back up to the very first corner, so I've just done shell, shell, and technically there's already a double crochet in here. So I need to go in here and place 2 more double crochets to create that first shell, so to speak. Okay, so there's 1, and there's 2, and then what we're going to do is we're going to slip stitch to the top of the 3rd chain. So 1, 2 is the corner, so this is the 3rd chain, and we're going to slip stitch, just like that. And the reason why I like starting with a partial corner and then finishing it off is that this way the seam of your rounds get hidden. Now some people will just slip stitch where they normally do and then work backwards or go back a stitch. Some of them turn their work. Totally a personal preference. This is just how I like to do mine. So what we're going to do is we're not going to snip off our yarn. We're going to move on to round number 5, which is actually now just a repeat of our square. So you can see it's now starting to get these prominent corners going, but it's still not quite definite. It's not as prominent as it can be. So we're going to do another round of our granny square motif. So now what I'll do is I'll just slip stitch into the space since I'm here. And then I'll begin again by chaining 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Remember, it counts as a double crochet, chain 2, and I will create a partial corner like I've done before. So that's a shell stitch with 2 and then 3 double crochets. So now round 5 is really easy because our corners have already been formed and we also know where our spaces are. So now for round 5, we're going to do a shell in 1, 2, 3 spaces, and into the 4th space you'll come across your corner and complete your corner as you usually do. Shell, chain 2, shell. So we have shell, 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 corner. You're going to do that all the way around. Place your last 2 double crochet stitches here. Slip stitch to join, and we will snip off our white yarn and move on to another color. Okay, so I have completed round number 5, and now I have 5 shells that run along each side. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then that goes to the next corner. So in round 4, we had 4 sets of shells that faced each side. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this one already belongs to that side. So because I now have 5 sets of shells along each side times 3 stitches each, that means I have 15 stitches across. And in total, that means I have 60 stitches all the way around. Remember, at this point, we're not counting the chain 1s, or the chain 2s, I should say, in between. And the reason why this is important, just to remember, is because now in round number 6, we are going to work into every single stitch. So we want to make sure that our stitch count is consistent on all 4 sides. So if I take my original square here, so you see round 6, we are now going to work into every single stitch to create a little bit more of a solid edge there. And so that's why it's important. As you can see, I've gone into every single stitch. Sometimes in the corner, it's easy to miss a stitch. So that's what we're going to go over right now. So let's pick up our green color again. And we are going to place a slip knot on our hook. And this time I'm going to go back to my first method, which is to create a self-contained double crochet stitch or a standalone double crochet stitch. Different people have different names for it. So I always like to start in the corner that I did not end off in. So either of these two are fine. I'm going to start here. I'm going to insert my hook. And immediately what I'm going to do is I'm going to single crochet. So I'm going to pull up that loop. And then I'm going to yarn over and pull through 2, creating that single crochet. Then I'm going to go back into that left leg there and do another single crochet. So it's like I'm stacking 2 single crochets on top of the other. So we are still going to create a partial corner. Okay, so instead of chaining 5, this is what I'm going to do. Now I'm going to chain 2 because I still need to create that corner. And now into every corner, instead of a full shell, we're only going to place 2 double crochet stitches. And the reason why I did this in round number 6 is because we are working into every single stitch and not leaving gaps like this. If we had done a full shell, after some experimentation, I noticed it was starting to buckle. So I just took away 1 stitch. So we've got 2 double crochets there. And now we're going to begin and work into the stitches, but we're going to do something a little bit different here in that we're going to work into the back loops only. So if I just turn my work this way, you can see the tops of our loops here, the little V's there. So that strand right there, that's the back loop. This one right here is the front loop. So we're going to work into the back loops only for round 6. So what we want to be careful is right here, it's so easy for this one to get forgotten because sometimes these loops come over. So remember that your loop always sits to the right of your stitch on the right side. So we have to make sure we pull this over, and this is the stitch we're going to work into first. And we're going to place double crochet stitches. So you're going to yarn over, find the back loop there, so you're going to insert your hook and double crochet as usual. And don't worry, see how it's stretching like that? That's normal. It will all settle in as we do more stitches. And then we go into the next stitch, back loop only, and we double crochet. Okay, and that is what you're going to do all the way to the end. Now remember I said that each side now has 15 stitches. So we added 2 more stitches on each side here. So you should have at the end of your first side, you're going to have the 15 stitches plus the 2 additional on each corner. So 2 here and 2 here. That's going to give you 19 stitches. So once you finish one side, you should then have 19 stitches along this side, 19 on the bottom, and 19 on the top. Okay, so go ahead and do that till the next corner. I am going to meet up with you in the very next corner just to kind of take you through how to go around that first full bend there. Okay, I'm just almost at the end here, and you can see by working into the back loops only, just helps to create this pretty little ridge. It just adds a little extra texture here. So I'm coming up to my last stitch, and this happens to be where I slip stitched to finish off my previous round. So sometimes it's a little bit tight in here. So just do your best. Just try to find a loop of some kind. And I'm going to pick that one. And you just might have to help it along there, just like that. Okay. So now I've worked into every single stitch. Now I have my corner. So I'm going to place 2 double crochet stitches into the corner space there. I'm going to work over that tail. 1 and 2. Whoops. And then my very first side is complete. Okay. And so then you might want to go back and make sure you've got your 19 stitches Remember, this one here does not count. It's part of the next side. So there's 2 extra here. We just did 2 extra on that side and 15 in the center. So now, as always, to create our corner, we chain 2, 1, 2, and then we go back into this corner space and place 2 more double crochets because we're now beginning the next side. So we have 1 and 2. Okay, and now I want to make sure that, remember that first stitch, sometimes it gets hidden there. Let me just pull that tail out of the way. So sometimes this first stitch gets a bit lost. So we want to make sure we work into that one first. Back loops only. And there we go. Then we continue on. And so now you can see how you go around your first corner there. And that is what you're going to continue doing all the way around. You know what to do in the corners now. And then you'll get to the end. And remember, we only did 1 here, so you need to place 1 more double crochet into this space, slip stitch to join, snip your yarn, and then I'll meet back with you to bring back our yellow color. Okay, so I have finished round number 6, and it was a good thing that I got a second skein of the mint color because this is pretty much all I have left, and I still have a couple more squares to go. Okay, so now we're going to go on to round number 7, and we're going to bring back our yellow color. So again, we're going to place a slip knot on our hook. And we're going to find a corner here. So you can see in the corners, see how we worked into the back loops only, and then the corners we went in. So just again, creates a really funky texture. So into the corner we're going to go. And again, I'm going to use the single crochet method, which is to bring up your loop and then yarn over right away and go through. Now this time I'm just going to leave it as is, because we are going to be working half double crochet stitches for round 7. So even though it's a single crochet, I'm going to count that as a half double crochet, just going to stitch it nice and loose. I'm going to chain 2 to still create that corner again. And now back into this corner space, I'm going to place 2 half double crochet stitches. So that means when we yarn over, we're going to pull through all 3 of those loops. And I'm going to do that again. 3 loops, yarn over, pull through all 3. Now I'm going to continue as I did in round number 6, working into the back loops only, except of course I'm going to use half double crochets. I'm going to make sure I don't skip that very first stitch. So we go into the back loop and half double crochet. Into the back loop and half double crochet. So remember, on each end you're always adding 2 extra stitches, which is going to give you 4 extra stitches on each side. So if round number 6 had 19 stitches on each side, you're now going to have 23 stitches along each side. Remember, we are not counting the chain 2. Okay, so you know the drill now. 1 into each back loop all the way to the end. When you get to the corner, you're going to place, you're going to place 2 half double crochets, chain 2, 2 half double crochets, then continue to work back loops only. Next corner the same thing, next corner the same thing. When you come back here, remember that we only had 1 stitch in here, so you need to place 1 more half double crochet. Slip stitch to join, snip your yarn, and we're going to change our colors 1 more time. So there will be an 8th round. So go ahead and finish round 7, and I'll meet back up with you here for round number 8. Okay, round 7 is complete, and we are basically going to reintroduce our white yarn for round number 8. And basically round number 8 is exactly the same as round number 7, so I'm not going to go through the whole thing with you guys. It's just that you're reintroducing your final color here. And the difference is that in round number 8, each side will now have 27 stitches around. So that's basically all you're going to do. You're going to begin again in the corner. And I like to do that single crochet beginning. Chain 2, 1, two, and then a half double crochet or two of them back into the corner. And then you're going to be working into the very first stitch there, don't miss that, into the back loops only. So you're going to continue working back loops and, whoops, and that is all you're going to do all the way to the end. So like I said, it's just a repeat of exactly what you did in round number 7. So that's it. So you're going to go ahead and do round number 8. You're going to finish that off. And then your basic motif for this blanket is going to be complete. Okay, so I've completed round number 8, and this is what the basic motif looks like. I now have 27 stitches along each side, and that's important when we go to sew in our motifs together. So I have a few of these here. And so we want to make sure that you have the same number of stitches on each side. So now what you're going to do is you are going to repeat this motif several times. So I am doing a total of 20 motifs in total. That's going to give me my 24, actually it's going to be about 22 inches some odd across with 27 going down. Now I did say the blanket was about 30 by 24. Don't forget, we are going to be adding a border at the end of this, which is going to extend our width and our length just a little bit. So for now, I will leave you to create all of your motifs and then come back and meet me so we can discuss how you're going to set up the motifs and how you're going to sew them all together. Okay guys, so I've completed my 20 squares and now we're ready to sew them together. So you can see I've already started doing a strip here. So what we're going to do is we're going to sew each square into a row of 5 squares. So that's kind of the length that I have of my blanket. Then once we have all of our strips sewn, or all of our squares sewn into strips, we will then take the strips and sew them together, okay? So the technique will be the same. I'm using the mattress stitch to sew these together, and I'll be doing that going into the back loops only, the back and the front loops, and you can see it just continues to create that nice ridge that we did earlier, okay? Isn't that sweet? I just love this color combination, and I love the feel of this yarn. Okay, so this is the strip, and I'm just going to show you really quickly. If you haven't done the mattress stitch before, I'm going to show it to you right now. And if you have, you can just go ahead and sew in all of your strips and then sew your blanket together, okay? So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you have your squares with the right sides facing up. Okay, so just want to make sure that's the right side and that's the back side. Right side and back side. Okay, and then you're going to take the right sides and you're going to place them so that they're facing each other. Okay, and then we're going to start in one of these corners. So then you want to take your yarn. I'm going to sew in using the white yarn. And you want to measure, I always like to measure twice, at least twice the length of the edge that I'm going to sew so that I have lots of yarn. And then I'm going to just feed that through my yarn here. Okay. And so what I want to do now is I want to pick up that basically the second chain of that chain 2 corner right there. And I'm going to pick up the front loop here. So see how if you look here, you've got a loop that's close to you and a loop that's away from you. I'm going to pick up the front loop in the front panel, which is the panel I'm holding closest to me. And then I'm going to pick up the next square and I'm going to find that second chain there, but I'm going to pick up the back loop. Okay. So you basically are working with the outside loops, bringing them together. So once I have that, I'm then just going to knot that so that they stay nice and secure together. And I'll just leave a little bit of a tail, and then I can sew that in at the end. Okay, just like that. And now what I'm going to do is I am going to go into the next stitch, which is right here from the back, and I'm going to take the back loop, and now I'm going to find the corresponding stitch, which is right here, and I'm going to find the front loop. So see, that's the back loop, this is the front loop, and I'm going to bring it through. Just get my tail out of the way. And now I'm going to go into the next stitch from the front loop and go into the corresponding stitch into the back loop. So this is different than a whip stitch where you might always go in from the back or always go in from the front. So here we're going to alternate. So we went from the front to the back, and now we're going to go from the back, of course, into the next stitch and go into the front with the front loop. So always make sure that you're matching up stitch per stitch. And this is why having always counting the number of stitches is important so that your squares are nice and equal. And that's pretty much it. So you're going to do, now I'm going to do front from the front loop and back to the back loop. Just like that. Okay, so when I open it up, you can see that the loops I did not catch, push to the front, creates this nice little ridge. Super straightforward. This will take you a little bit of time. So you're going to go ahead and do that and sew into the first chain of the corner on each one, and then I would tie a knot there. Okay. Once you're done that, you're going to then take your next square. You're going to do the same thing. Right side facing up, you're going to fold the right sides down, and then you're going to attach the yarn again, whip stitch, knot. Once this one is done, you're going to take the next square, right side facing each other, and do the same thing. And you're going to do that until you have your strip of 5. So then you're going to set that aside and do your next set of 5. Set that aside, next set of 5. So you're going to have a total of 4 strips with 5 squares each. Okay? Once you have your 4 strips, you are going to do the same thing to sew each strip together. So I've got a few strips already sewn, so I'm going to just quickly show you how you're going to connect those strips. Okay, so I have another strip here. So you can see they're sewn together and these are sewn together. So same idea, make sure that the right sides are facing up. Okay. Isn't that pretty? Oh, it's going to look so cute. Okay, so right side's facing up, and then just take the right side and face them down towards each other. Okay, they match up nicely. Then you're going to do the same thing. Take a nice long piece of yarn, again, double the length at least. Then you're going to tie the knot here in the corner, and then you're going to whip stitch it all the way down until you get to the end. Then you're going to knot it off. Then you've got these 2 strips sewn together. Then you take the next strip and you do the same thing until all of your strips and basically all of your squares are sewn together. Oh my goodness, I know I get so excited over these things, but I do. I love when a project comes together. This is going to be so sweet and so pretty. I can't wait to give this to the next new little baby coming our way. All right, guys, I'm going to leave you there. It's going to take you a little while to sew all of this. Once you're done sewing all of your squares and strips together, then we're going to talk about creating our border. So I'll see you back here in a little bit. Okay, my squares are all sewn together. So this is what my blanket is looking like right now. Oh, so adorable. I love it. Okay, so now the only thing that's left is to do a nice little border around here. So I'm going to keep it somewhat simple, but yet just add a little touch of detail. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pick up my white yarn again, and I'm going to do one round of a simple border going all the way around, still using the half double crochet stitch. So that's what I'm going to just take you through right now. Okay, so I'm just going to place a slip knot onto my hook here, just like that. And so I'm going to pick up one of my corners. I always like to start my borders in the corner. So I've got this nice corner here. So I'm just going to insert my hook and I'm going to slip stitch to join. Just like that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to chain 4. So I have 1, 2, 3, and 4. So 2 of these chains are going to count as a half double crochet, and the other 2 chains are going to count as our corner space. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into this corner and I'm going to place 2 half double crochets. So I have 1 and I have 2. I'm just going to work over that tail there. Just like that. Okay, so that's our corner. And now I'm just going to continue working into the rest of the stitches. Now for this border, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to work into the full stitch now. So I'm not going to use the back loops only like we've been doing previously. So I'm going to yarn over. And this little tail keeps wanting to get away from me. And I'm going to find the very next stitch. Now remember, anytime you're in a corner, you don't want to miss that first stitch, which is actually right there. Okay, so I'm going to insert my first stitch right there and half double crochet. And that is what I'm going to do into each and every single stitch all the way around. Very, very simple this first round for our border. Just 1 stitch into each stitch. And we're just working that half double crochet. So just want to do a few here into the full stitch, and I'll do one more. Okay, just like that. So see, it just kind of makes that white portion extend out a little bit more and it sits a little bit flush. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and finish across this first square here, and I just want to talk about how to crochet over the joins, because sometimes it just, you can see there's a little bit of a bump there, and sometimes it can throw people off to accidentally put in too many stitches or not enough stitches. So I'm going to finish placing 1 stitch into each, and I'm just going to meet up with you here just to talk you through that little section. Okay, so I'm coming up to my join here, and I have to say, every time you work on modular projects, the situation can be different. Like sometimes you're going to see a very definite dip, like that one is a little bit more prominent as well. Sometimes the join is a little bit smoother, like that one's pretty decent. Again, see, that one's a little bit more level here, but sometimes you're going to get a little bit of a dip. So it really is a visual. You have to like stitch it and then kind of let it sit back, see how you like it. The idea is that you want that line to eventually be flush. Now with borders, I tend to do more than 1 round specifically for this reason, to sometimes allow that edge to straighten out. So in a case like this, it's not too bad, but there's a little bit of a dip there. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to begin half double crocheting into that corner space of this square, but I'm not going to resolve it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the space where there's a join here. So see how these two came together? I'm going to insert my hook just anywhere in there where I can insert it, and then I'm going to pull up another loop. So I have 4 loops on the hook. Now I'm going to yarn over and pull through all of them. So it's almost like I'm doing a decrease, but I'm going to show you why it's not a decrease. So I'm going to yarn over. I'm going to begin my next half double crochet into the same spot I just went into. So I'm going to begin here, pull up a loop, and now I'm going to go into that next corner space of the next square. And then I have 4 loops on the hook again. I'm going to yarn over and pull through all of them. So in a way, there was two like little decreases, I guess you can say, even though we didn't decrease the number of stitches, but it just kind of really snuggles in this corner to the center and this corner to the center so that you have kind of a nice flush look. And then I continue on working my half double crochets into each stitch. And I'm going to do a few here just so you guys can see how that join section came out. So I have another one there. And then I'm going to do one more before I pull my work back. So it's important to do a few more stitches away from that seam. So then you can see how your stitches are sitting. Okay, so see? Now I can see, okay, so that edge is straightening out. So I'm really, really happy with how that worked. And that's it. And so sometimes you might actually need to do an extra stitch in the seam if you find that it's dipping in a bit. That means you need an extra stitch. But as always, use your own judgment and see how you like the visual. Like even right now I can see that there's slightly still a little dip up, but I know that in the next round or two, that's completely going to go away. So that's it, that's all. Now you know how to work your seams. You are going to work one stitch into each stitch and into every corner. By the time you get to the next corner here, you're going to get to this corner space, you're just going to create a simple corner. So you're going to place 2 half double crochets, chain 2, and 2 half double crochets back into that same chain space. And you can see that's what we did in this square here. So that's all we're going to do, keeping it super simple for this first round of our border. So this is going to take you a little while now. So the sewing took you a little while, and now your border is going to take you another little while. So you know what I always tell you to do, put on a podcast, a favorite show, or maybe you're just going to sit out in the backyard and listen to the birds chirp. That's always lovely as well. So whatever you choose to do, I hope you enjoy it while you are crocheting your border, and I will see you back here once you've finished round 1 of your border. Okay, so I have finished my border, so you can see it's just unifying all the squares nicely. And I'm going to add a little mesh detail now to the next round of my border. And so I've just slip stitched to join. And so I'm going to slip stitch into my corner. And for this next round, we're going to be using double crochet stitches. So I am going to chain up 5. So I have 1, 2, 3. These 3 will count as a double crochet, and then I'm going to chain 1 and 2 more to give me my 5, and these last 2 chains will count as our corner space. So now we're going to go back into this space here. We're going to place a double crochet. Okay, so that's our corner. Now we're going to chain 1. We're going to skip the next stitch, just have a little tail there. We're going to skip this next stitch here. Now remember, the next stitch is actually right here and not here. So this is the one we're skipping, and then we're going into this one, and we're going to place a double crochet. So the mesh stitch, remember, consists of a double crochet, chain 1, and continue to repeat that. So see how it creates a little spacing there? So now we're going to chain 1, skip the next stitch, and into the following stitch, place a double crochet. And that is basically what you're going to repeat all the way around the border for your next round. And I'm just going to do a few more here so you can see the full effect. Chain 1, skip the next stitch, and into the following stitch, double crochet. Chain 1, skip a stitch, into the next stitch, double crochet. Okay, so you get an effect just like that. And it just gives us a little bit of this lacy feel at the very end, which I think will be very pretty and dainty for a baby blanket. So go ahead and do that all the way to the end of this first side here. I do want to meet you up in the corner here just to kind of go over creating a full corner using the mesh stitch, because right now this was just the beginning corner, right? So that's only partial. So go ahead and do your mesh stitch and I'll meet you at your very next corner. Okay, so I've worked into my very last stitch here and now I'm at the corner. Sometimes you may end up with an extra stitch, sometimes you may not. It doesn't really matter. Once you come to the end, you're going to do your usual chain 1, and now you're going to go into your corner and place a double crochet. You're going to chain 2, 1, 2, go back into that corner space and double crochet, and you chain 1. That is how you're going to work the corners for your mesh stitch, okay? Then you come around the bend. Again, you skip that first stitch like we did before, and you double crochet into the next stitch. Just like that. So that maintains the integrity of the mesh stitch So now you just continue doing as you've been doing, and this is kind of how my edge is looking so far. I love it. It's just very simple, but adds a little something to it. So you're going to do that all the way around, and when you get to the end, you're going to slip stitch to join, and then I will pick back up with you then to talk about round 3 of your border. Okay, and I'm just finishing my round here, slip stitching to join. And my mesh stitch round is complete, so you can see it creates this really pretty little detailing on the edge. And now we're going to do the final round of our border. So we're going to slip stitch into the chain space here. We're going to proceed to chain 5 next. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 3 of these chains count as a double crochet and the other 2 chains count as a corner space. So now we're going to go back into the same corner space and we're going to place 2 double crochets. So we're using double crochet stitches for this round. Then go back into the same space. Okay, now we're going to work into every single stitch. So don't forget there's a stitch right here. Insert. And then we're going to go into the space. So this last round is just going to be a nice solid round. Into the stitch and into the space. So keeping it very simple, nice, elegant finish to the end. See? Just like that. So that will just kind of elevate the mesh stitch for you. So that is the final touch for our blanket. So go ahead and finish your round. Remember, in each corner we're placing 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets. Other than that, it's 1 double crochet into each stitch and space. So finish your final round and I'll meet back up with you for the final reveal. Okay, the border is complete. And my baby blanket is finished. I just adore how that simple little mesh stitch just added a really pretty little added detail to the edge of this blanket. It didn't have to be anything too crazy. Sorry, I've got the blanket white on white. It doesn't always come out very well, but here it is, the Sunshine Baby Blanket. So I hope you found it tons of fun to put together. I know I did. And, you know, somewhat easy. Like once you understood kind of the construction of the square, it was just a matter of replicating them and creating more and then sewing them all together. And we've got our sunshine blanket. I'm so excited. And just in time too, because I am going to be gifting this to the mother-to-be in just a couple of weeks. So I'm super excited. Now, if you guys have any questions, you know you can always pop them for me in the comment box down below. Or you can email me directly at info@crochetcrafty.com and make sure to visit me on the website. As I always tell you guys, And sign up for my monthly newsletter. I gift a free written pattern every month. And if you'd like to check out more patterns, you can find them on my Etsy shop. That's at Crochet Crafty Canada. And as always, thank you so much for supporting me and stopping in, saying hello, commenting, pressing that like button. And as always, if you like this type of project, make sure to give me a thumbs up, and then I'll know to keep making more like these. And if you're new here and have enjoyed today's tutorial and look forward to more, I encourage you to press that subscribe button. I upload a brand new video every Wednesday morning. And for those of you that are interested in supporting the channel a little bit further, you can press that thanks button down below, and with a donation as little as $2, it just helps me to create better videos for you guys. So guys, I hope you have an amazing day. Happy crocheting, take good care of yourselves, and I will see you in next week's session. Bye-bye.